Welcome to the Chaos Whispers of Healthcare, the podcast for busy healthcare leaders who are ready to get out of survival mode so they can focus on what matters most. This is where the burnout stops and the real talk starts. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Carter, and each week I sit down with healthcare innovators who get it. We will unpack the chaos, laugh through the hard stuff, and get you at least 2 practical tips you can use at work right away. If you're ready to clear the chaos and lead with impact, you've come to the right place. Let's jump in. Welcome to another episode of the Chaos Whispers of Healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Carter, and today I'm joined by an amazing nurse leader and entrepreneur, the incredible Rich Kinney. I met Rich while planning for a conference here in Dallas-Fort Worth, and we were looking for a speaker who could help our nurse leaders understand the evolving landscape of AI in healthcare. Rich gave a powerful presentation that was not only practical, but also inspirational. I had the additional joy of getting to know him as a person as well. And let me tell you, Rich is one of the most authentic and compassionate human beings I have ever encountered. Rich's impressive background includes leading the flight nurse program at Duke University Health, being a chief clinical and innovation officer with AI and health tech companies, advisor to many healthcare organizations, including the AONL, running a physical therapy practice with his lovely wife, and so much more. He is the ultimate entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Rich.
Thanks, Megan. I'm excited to be here for sure and chat with you. I think you're probably overselling me just a bit, but seriously, your passion, your thoughtfulness always come through. So I'm grateful to join the conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, that's the job as host. We have to really speak highly of our guests, right? You've done a lot of amazing things, so it's absolutely earned. I like to start every episode by asking our guest to please tell us about your most chaotic leadership moment.
Yeah. There are so many, right? We think about kind of nursing and healthcare leadership. It's like, well, what day do I want to look into my diary for?
Yeah.
I mean, there are 2 that kind of come top of mind. One is when I was managing LifeFlight. The other was designing and launching a hospital at home program. I mean, which one do you think you want me to? Either one of those you think would resonate more?
Let's do the LifeFlight one. That sounds exciting.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So you mentioned, so I was a flight nurse for a number of years for Duke Life Flight here in Durham, which is where I still reside. And I had the privilege of becoming the program manager over that team for a few years. And one of the memories that always sticks out of my mind is kind of a leadership defining moment for me. It was, when you're in a role like that, you have call. And so I was woken up. I had a crew out at a rural hospital that called me at around 3 a.m. in the morning. I was fast asleep, woke up. They had went down to a hospital to pick up a neonate. And the neonate was extremely sick. They did not feel comfortable and confident enough to be able to transport the neonate. They felt like it was a little kind of outside of their depth, outside of their scope. And so looking at, I had my other crews were all dispatched. So trying to kind of figure out how do I get them the help that they need. And really it came down to me going in. And so, it was 3 a.m. I have to wipe the sleep out of my eyes. And then had, the helicopter fly me out there to go and then, link up arms with the team. So it was defining in the sense of, being able to kind of lead by example, being willing to always roll up your sleeve in those moments. But chaotic in that, that's always kind of above and beyond what the role of when you're in a leadership role requires. I still had to go in, that next day in normal hours and tackle everything else. So it was very extenuating in that sense, but trying to figure out the logistics of how to manage that, but get them the support that they needed. When I had all my other crews indisposed at that moment, felt chaotic at the time.
I can imagine to be awake enough and focus on the needs like that. That's impressive for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But I would say kind of when I reflect on moments of chaos, I always kind of think about the importance of relationships and trust, right? So we had systems, we had backup systems, we had things where it shouldn't have resulted in that. But when it came to it, we always do the right thing and wanted to be able to care for that patient and get them back up to Duke. And relationships will always trump those systems. And so, that's kind of always what I kept front and center.
I love that you highlighted that because it's such a difficult balance as a leader. We have 24/7, 365 responsibility. We know that going into the leadership role. And I think I've shared with you previously, as a new nurse manager, that was probably the hardest part of the job because you never knew when some chaotic emergency, and every week it was something you'd never heard of before. No two emergencies are ever the exact same. And so learning how to balance that response and those relationships with self-care and that balance, it's a really tricky tightrope, especially when we have a history, especially in nursing, of celebrating kind of that martyrdom almost. Absolutely. Yeah. Clinical, safety of the patient first at all times. But when it becomes a pattern, I think it's important for leaders to give themselves permission to put other systems in place to create that balance. So I love that you brought that example up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point.
And you've done so many different things in such a short time in your career. So tell us about how you went from a traditional healthcare leadership path to an innovator.
Oh, goodness. I think my move into more of that innovation space, if you will, came probably down, if I had to sum it up, down to curiosity and frustration. Right. Yeah. So, and a stubborn unwillingness to accept the status quo. So after seeing, I think, just repeated instances where technology was hindering rather than helping frontline nurses, I realized someone with clinical experience really needed to advocate for better tech integration. And so there was this chasm that I saw between operations and technology. Yeah. And so that pushed me towards roles where I felt like I could start bridging that gap. And that's, I think, even most recently evolved into this AI space. I've always had what folks would call, I guess, an entrepreneurial mindset. I still sometimes don't feel like I can call myself that, but, and maybe it would help to define, because I think maybe sometimes we overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Being entrepreneurial, in my view, simply means seeing problems as opportunities and being willing to experiment with solutions, even when you don't have all the answers. So a good entrepreneur, you can self-identify as an entrepreneur if you have this voice in your head that's always saying there's got to be a better way to do this.
Yeah.
And so that. For the longest time, I would call myself an entrepreneur, at least to try to differentiate that a little bit as someone who brings that innovative thinking into established organizations.
Yeah.
So I wasn't launching startups, which is what we typically think of as entrepreneurs, but more so I was transforming workflows within health systems and questioning why we accept certain certain inefficiencies, and just being unwilling and, like I said, sometimes stubborn, which would get me in trouble. With not accepting the status quo.
Yep. Yeah, we rocking the boat, if you will, in some organizations, which is good. But for folks who've been there a long time and are not change agile, it can be pretty inflammatory for them to respond to that. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, that kind of, we also named this space of informatics, and that's where I came to understand that field or that domain as really owning that responsibility for bridging that gap between technology and operations. So it's kind of applied technology or applied information, if you will. And so just really been at work trying to bridge those two worlds that desperately need that translation. So yeah, I've just had a fortunate opportunity to just take on various roles. And I think each project or each role has taught me that, I guess, sustainable innovation happens when you honor, I think, both that operational reality and the technological possibility. And just before I knew it, I take on a new project or take on a new role or opportunity, pick up a new skill.
I love that you're describing this, though, because as you're describing it, I'm seeing, so this is my 9th episode in this first season. I asked this question of every guest, and what's been interesting is there's a common thread. I saw an issue that there wasn't a solution for. And usually it's I tried to push for one and I got a no, or there was a barrier. And at that point, they had a choice. Do I just accept that and keep my head down and just try to get through my shift? Or do I refuse to accept no or current state and insist on finding a way, no matter how long it takes? And so I hope that that messaging gets out and can help inspire other healthcare leaders and clinicians to say, you're absolutely going to have great ideas. You're absolutely going to meet resistance. That's not the end of the story. It doesn't have to be. And
Yeah.
it may lead you to a totally different career trajectory. Like you didn't graduate and assume that you were going to be this AI guru, right?
Right.
Like it
Yep.
just happened over time with you refusing to accept current state. So I love that you described that so eloquently.
Yeah. And I think, there's a bit of an art to it. And one thing that I would probably want listeners to hear too is not to give up too easily or write your organization off when you do get a no answer.
Right.
Right. But developing that sense of discernment to know when you have reached a ceiling. And if you feel committed and strong enough about something, that then to identify when it's time to move on or time to take on another role, or you see that opportunity to develop a passion in some other way, right?
Yeah.
I think we all have already faced that as leaders when we, left direct full-time patient care.
Right.
All of us will have said, I'm sure at some point, that, well, why did you move into a leadership role? It was because I felt like I could impact more people than just one patient at a time. So it's when that kind of desire, passion becomes strong enough to kind of draw you into something else. So, yeah. So for me, it's always been that intersection between operations and technology and wanting to fiercely protect that time that clinicians spend with patients, that human connection, and seeing we were on this trajectory where that was only worsening. And I've been, my passion and commitment has been towards getting that to something that I believe it needs to look like.
100%. Yeah. Preaching to the choir for sure. So I know that you have an expansive skill set and knowledge that covers a diverse range of healthcare topics, but we also, I say we in the nursing community see you as one of our experts on emerging AI technologies in our space. So one of the top pain points, especially for our busy healthcare leaders, is trying to keep up with this landscape because it seems to shift every single day. So what are some reliable sources of information that healthcare leaders can use to stay updated on how AI might impact their world?
Yeah. And I found talking about kind of that career journey, I found myself in this place, kind of happenstance where I was joined SAS as a leading analytics company, and I was advising their healthcare industry strategy. And we would like to say we were doing AI before others knew how to spell it. And so when this generative AI really kind of exploded and came to market, I had this front row seat working for an organization that had a really solid grasp on what AI is, what it isn't, what it took to do it well, what trustworthy and responsible AI looks like and means, and what the requirements are. And so I've just had opportunities to educate others around that. And yeah, there is a real literacy gap. And unfortunately, there's become so much hype around this that it's confusing. And I think it's easy to feel like you need a computer science degree now to really understand it. But that's not true. So if I break that question down, first I would say, start to think about how you can build a foundation. Is the same way we had to learn medical terminology. There are some basic vocabularies that we need to learn. And so finding some kind of good primer or workshop, which is how we met, right? Organizations, I think bringing speakers or experts like myself to be able to come and lead others through this in an interactive and engaging way that I think demystifies it and brings that fear factor down a little bit is a great first place to start. So that's really where I've been living as building that literacy foundation, if you will, for healthcare leaders. And then from there, as I was thinking about this, I'd like to call it a 3 Ps approach, if you will: publications, people, and pilots.
Yeah.
That third word particularly is a dirty word. But,
Yeah.
publications for one. So like
Yeah.
healthcare IT news, the New England Journal of Medicine has an AI thread those are great resources. And AONL honestly is paying attention to this as well. We've got a brand new committee, the LIT Committee for Leadership, Innovation, Technology, and Transformation. And this is one of our tasks to build digital literacies for healthcare leaders and curate these, some of the essential content around topics like AI.
Yeah.
But I would say for publications, that's one source to your question. The key is to find somebody that you can engage in this conversation with, right? Find a
Right.
buddy you can read some of this stuff with. Start engaging in conversation.
Yeah.
The second one for people, people are always welcome to engage or follow me on LinkedIn. One of the nursing leaders that I have the most respect for, honestly, is Robbie Freeman, who's a CNIO up at Mount Sinai. And he has been developing and implementing AI with a lot of success and in very thoughtful ways. And so I'd say he's someone to kind of follow and see what they're doing at Mount Sinai. And then the other person that came to mind was my friend of mine, Michael Carey at the Duke School of Nursing, because he's really looking at and working on developing some frameworks around AI literacy specifically for nursing and nursing leaders as well. And then pilots, right? So some of the organizations like Mayo Clinic or Kaiser Intermountain, some of those leading health systems that are a little bit more forward about what they're deploying and are advanced with that. I think the HIMSS Nursing Informatics community is great, and then the Health Management Academy is another gold mine where I think you're hearing from folks and they're sharing more of their unfiltered experiences. They're not trying to sell anything, right? We're not reading this through press releases where there's a lot of what I like to call marketecture. But they're sharing kind of real stories and real challenges about what's actually working and what's not.
Right.
Those are probably some places that I would try to start. But like I said, I think there is a real gap, and that's honestly something I'm trying to figure out how I can help support healthcare leaders more directly through developing some content or providing some other resources as well.
Yeah, I love that. And just for the listener's sake, in the show notes, I'll list all of those and direct links to either those people or those organizations so you guys have access to that. So, Rich, if I'm a healthcare leader who just has not had the chance to really sit down and research AI in healthcare, what are the top, say, 3 to 5 facts that I should know right now?
Okay. For one, I'd say AI is already here. It's not new. Right. It's just been hidden. So your CT scanners, your sepsis alerts, staffing software, they use some form of AI. Right. It's just prior to 2022, we had great terminology for this landscape. We had these types of technologies really well defined. And then when ChatGPT hit the market, we relabeled everything AI. So it's caused a lot of confusion around that. But the question isn't whether to adopt AI, it's whether you're going to be intentional about it. So that would probably be the first one. There's a lot of focus right now on scribing. Documentation is the gateway drug. So every health system seems like they're piloting AI scribes right now. Why? It's the problem to tackle. We're losing 2 hours of care delivery for every hour of patient contact. That's where we can see an immediate ROI. A lot of the efforts have been focused on physician documentation, but these companies are starting to look at and they're developing things for nursing workflows. As you can imagine, they're way more complex than physician workflows. So there's a lot of work to do there, but that's where a lot of the focus is right now. I'd say nurses are key to the successful deployment of AI. So if you're with a tech company, tech fails when it disrupts workflow, and nurses understand workflow at a granular level. And any AI implementation, particularly, that does not have nursing leadership at the table is doomed. So I've
Right.
seen that play out a dozen of times.
Yeah.
And then the last one I might touch on might be around like ethics and liability. So, the liability question is clearer than you think. You're liable for outcomes whether you use AI or not. So Mickey Tripathy, who is the former chief AI officer for the Department of Health and Human Services and the Office of National Coordinator, he's now the chief AI implementation officer for Mayo Clinic. In a meeting he had said to me that the ONC is now considering misuse as important as misuse, right? So we look a lot at this focus around misuse and the potential for misuse around AI technologies, but it's just as important to look at misuse if we're not using these tools as they continue to evolve. And there's of course already ruling that not using some of these available standard of care tools can be negligent. So there's a risk in standing still and not moving forward as well.
I'm so glad you said that out loud because it's so interesting. I had a colleague who is hiring me to host some of my workshops. I do workshops to help leaders get more time to focus on their teams. And I always leave time at the end of the workshop to help them with their own tech stack, whatever it is. We'll sit there and we'll really try to optimize, whether it's something as basic as Teams or if it's Copilot or whatever, we'll sit there and teach them how to use it. Yeah. And this individual said, well, we won't need that because our health system refuses to adopt AI. And I didn't respond to it, but I thought, oh boy, one, it's already in your system, as you pointed out earlier. You just don't know it. And two, that is probably not going to be a long-term winning strategy. Not my place, but I just thought, man, that's going to be really frustrating for them here pretty quick because to your point, not adopting it is going to leave you behind. And it's not disservice to your patients, That's interesting.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what is the greatest gift that AI can give healthcare and what is the greatest threat we should be wary of?
Okay. The gift is profound. I think as we've talked and probably said a few times already, AI can give us back time with our patients, which is what's so critical and foundationally important to healthcare. So imagine your nurse is spending 70% of their shift at the bedside instead of 30%. Right? AI can handle things like pattern recognition, documentation, scheduling optimization, all the tasks that put us that interrupt that and pull us away from human connection. So I've seen we always talk about sepsis as that's kind of one of the first use cases that were really developed around AI. And so we've got a lot of great stories of success around leveraging analytics and AI for predicting sepsis. And so we can predict it 6 hours before traditional methods. That's not replacing clinical judgment. That's giving clinicians superpowers.
Right.
Now, to your other side of that, the threat that keeps me up at night, it's not robots taking jobs, which is, what everyone talks about. Right. I think that there's two risks. One is kind of the loss of critical thinking and how do we balance and still develop those skills. There's some research that's starting to actually come out around that. I've just seen a couple articles in the last week or two. And then the other one that's critically important and why we do need AI regulation, and it was stripped out of this most recent bill, thankfully, is the risk of what I would call digital redlining. So AI systems trained on biased data that perpetuate some of the disparities in the systems and actually will only accentuate them if we're not careful. Right. So if we're not careful, AI is going to optimize healthcare for the privileged while leaving the vulnerable populations further behind. Right. So that's why we need diverse voices in AI development. That's not just nice to have, it's mission critical. And routinely I see nurses who are best able to show up and advocate for those populations as well.
That's such a great point. I love that. This has already been such a great conversation today, and we could easily have an entire series focused on you sharing all of your knowledge with us. Before we close out, I like to talk about laughter because frankly, it is the only thing that keeps us going in stressful times. It's either that or crying, right?
Yeah.
So where are you going for laughter these days?
Oh goodness. You've seen me on stage. I love to have fun when I'm presenting, and that you mentioned authenticity at the start of our conversation. That is a value that I hold dear. So I try to bring that forward to kind of lighten some of these more heavier topics. But where I go for laughter, honestly, is probably my kids. I've got 3 kids, 13, 11, and 6. My youngest daughter is 6, and she's hilarious. She is a daddy's girl through and through. So there's no shortage of laughter. I'd say there's no shortage of hilarious and humbling moments as a daughter, as a father of 3, with some daughters in the mix there. But beyond that, an occasional stand-up comedian, Nate Bargatze is probably my favorite at the moment.
Love him. Love him. He makes us laugh too. He's coming to town soon too. We need to get tickets for him.
Nice.
And if for the listener's sake, if you are not following Rich on LinkedIn, you should, because he posts on occasion some of the insights that his 6-year-old shares with him and his wife. And they are, being that age, it's so innocent and so on point. I don't even know if she realizes just how on point some of her observations are, but it makes me laugh out loud every time.
Right.
So I love that. Absolutely. And so if our listeners want to connect with you further, Rich, besides LinkedIn, where can they find you?
Yeah. To be honest, LinkedIn is the best place. Yeah. I'm pretty active there. I try to be. I think that is probably the most accessible. Folks can find me, Rich G. Kinney, and I try to always engage there. I'd say if you're ever passing through Durham, reach out. I'd love to connect. I'm always wanting to connect with people who are trying to make healthcare better. And, that's how the best innovations start, honestly, just with a conversation, much similar to one like this.
Yeah, love that. And just for the audience too, a shameless plug for my friend here. If any of you are looking at hosting a conference event or looking for a speaker, I can tell you from personal experience, Rich is your guy. So absolutely reach out to him. He does a great job of making sure he individualizes the presentation to your needs. And he has direct access to all of the latest when it comes to AI. So highly recommend him.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So that's already a wrap for today's episode. All of Rich's practical tips and resources you heard will be included in the episode show notes and his contact information as well. So until next time, fellow Chaos Whisperers. Thanks for joining us on the Chaos Whispers of Healthcare. If today's episode resonated with you, please be sure to follow this podcast, rate, and leave a review on your favorite platform. I'm Dr. Megan Carter, and I will be back next week with more real talk, fresh strategies, and guests who are redefining what it means to lead with impact. Want to keep the conversation going? Be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn and download free tools and resources from my website. Both links are in the show notes. Let's heal this broken healthcare system together, one day at a time.